President Cyril Ramaphosa will deliver the eulogy at the renowned photographer and activist Peter Magubane's Provincial Official Category 2 funeral at the Bryanston Methodist Church, that's north of Johannesburg. Magubane died on the 1st of this month after a long illness. He was 91 years old. Magubane documented critical moments in South Africa's liberation struggle. They include the Rivonia trial, the 1956 Women's March, the 1976 Students' Uprising, and so much more. Well, for more on this, let's bring in SABC News senior reporter Griselda Lewis. Griselda, a good morning to you. I can just imagine the turnout at that funeral this morning for this journalistic giant. A good morning to you.
Well, absolutely, Naledi, a journalistic giant, as you correctly point out. President Cyril Ramaphosa, who is to deliver that eulogy, has already arrived here at the Bryanston Methodist Church. This is where the service will take place just ahead of his final resting place. Dr Peter Magubane will be laid to rest at the Four Ways Memorial Park. But I can tell you, scores of leaders of society have arrived at the funeral to pay homage to a man who used his lens, his camera, as a tool to capture and expose the atrocities that were meted out by the apartheid government against black people in South Africa during a very dark time in this country. Former President Thabo Mbeki has also arrived at the funeral service, also to pay his respects as well, alongside with the family. Since we heard of his passing, many spoke about this journalistic giant, this man who used his tool. As I've been saying throughout the course of this morning, many people took up arms during the apartheid regime to fight against the brutality of apartheid. But you had a man, the likes of Dr Peter Magubane and others, who used the tools that they had at the time. And in this instance, it was a camera. Those images fostering international solidarity for the plight of black people in South Africa during apartheid. We're expecting the proceedings to get underway any minute now, but I tell you, many people from the arts, from government, politicians. We've also got the Gauteng Premier, who is also here, Panyaza Lesufi, also to pay homage. The cortege has already arrived at the church now, ahead of the start of this service. But let's take a listen to what one of the veterans in the arts, Dr. John Kani, had to say in paying tribute to Dr. Peter Magubane. Let's take a listen.
Days in detention, we survived assassinations. And when we look today and look at the plight of our people as a whole, you almost want to question, is this what Magubane put a camera in a loaf of bread and risked? Is it what Magubane did when the cops were dragging these young children and took those pictures as a record that they have him? That's what his work. This is what we survived. It's because as the cops were arresting us and throwing us into police van, taking us into detention, someone took a picture. I remember on the 23rd day in detention, a piece of paper came under the cell. It was a picture of me and Winston. And the demonstrations in London, all over the world, released John Khan. Without that one person taking that picture, I could have been easily died in that cell. So today, as I say again, here's another warrior. Here's another MK cultural soldier. We're putting the flowers this time on his grave. But death has no victory over Magubane, because his name lives forever. We are here, look at the many people that are here to celebrate his life. And death had thought that it silenced him. Never, not us, not the artist.
Well, as I indicated, the program expected to start any minute now. The cortege having already arrived here at the Bryanston Methodist Church. And one of those who's also in attendance here this morning, also from the arts, is Mamu Abigail Kubeka, who also highlighted the significance of the work that Dr. Peter Magubane did in highlighting the plight of South Africans under the helm of the apartheid government. Let's take a listen to what Mam Abigail Kubeka had to say.
Great loss. You know, he saved us. He saved the world. But he's not gone. He's still with us because his work, what he fought for, what he did, is still here. and we cherish it. And I'm so happy at the memorial, some of the guys were talking about him, and they were saying they were picking up the baton, which is wonderful. So, to the family, to the world, to South Africa, to the world, my condolences.
So had it not been for the images that were beamed throughout the world, of course shot by the likes of Dr. Peter Magubane and his other colleagues like Alf Kumalo and many others who during very difficult times captured those images of the brutality of the apartheid state, the international community would not have got to see exactly what was taking place in South Africa at the time. You would recall, of course, the caliber of man who is being celebrated here today, also having been arrested and detained multiple times, spending hundreds of days in solitary confinement, often clashing with apartheid police, standing truth to power at the particular time. I recall just one of the references that have been made is at a time where he was arrested while he was capturing the images of a demonstration outside the cell of Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, just one of the instances where you'd recall, of course, we spoke about instances where he'd been shot 17 times with rubber bullets while also trying to capture images at the funeral service of a youth activist. So of the many times that he did his work, there was no fear. They say that Dr. Peter Magubane refused to leave the country. He wanted to tell the truth of what was taking place in South Africa. So I think at this time, as the cortege makes its way, the remains of Dr. Peter Magubane make their way inside the church here at the Bryanston Methodist Church. Many will be here to pay tribute and to pay homage to a man who used his lens. That was his power. While many took up arms, he used his camera as a weapon to capture the atrocities of what was taking place at the time. He was gifted with his camera. We understand it was a modest Kodak brownie, we understand, by his father when he was a teenager. And after completing high school, Dr. Magubane was eager to put his camera to use. You would know, of course, that he found work as a driver at, the iconic in its own way Drum Magazine offices. This was about in 1954, and basically moved up the ranks to a darkroom assistant. And basically, that was where this journey had begun for Dr. Peter Magubane. President Cyril Ramaphosa expected in that eulogy to touch on the celebration of this globally renowned photographer who documented, as I said, these critical moments, in South Africa's liberation struggle, and of course the emergence of democracy, having passed away on the 1st of January this year at the age of 91. He was also, you would know, a distinguished member of the National Order of Luthuli. And this Provincial Official Funeral Category 2, you would know, includes elements of police ceremonial honors and is reserved for distinguished persons specifically designated, of course, by President of South Africa on the request of the Premier of the province, in this case, Banyaza Lesufi, who is, of course, the Premier of the province. Using his camera to document and record. Just have a moment of silence as the clergy makes their way in.
We come now with nothing into this world, and it is obvious that when we depart with nothing.
All right, the body of veteran photojournalist Dr. Peter Magubane being brought into the cathedral there where the funeral is taking place. We are expecting, of course, that President Cyril Ramaphosa will be delivering the eulogy as the clergy makes their way into the church. And we'll keep a close eye on those images and certainly bring you the live proceedings as well as soon as that program does kick off.